Hi folks, Corey Minnick with Minnick Family Farms here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about sprouting grains. Over this winter we had our chickens drop off like they normally do through the winter. And when they hit zero we got to thinking, well, what have we done in the past to help increase egg production? We got to thinking, in the past we've done some sprouting of grains. So we got back into that. And it's a fairly simple process, and in this case, at this time of year, with the same number of chickens, about 90 that we have, we've almost doubled our egg production from this time last year, and that's great. So what we do with this process is basically you take some dried grains. In this case, we've got some wheat, rye, peas, and oats in there, and we've grown that on our farm. It's a little dirty, but we'll take that and we'll put water in it. Basically we start with a 1/2 to 3/4 bucket for us, and in this case then we fill that up with water to be just over the top of that grain. And what you'll end up with is letting that sit for 12 hours, and then 12 to 14. Sometimes I go longer, I forget. It's okay, it ends up all right. We then drain it into a drain bucket, and that's just basically a bucket with 1/4-inch holes in it. This one's kind of beat up, and it still works. So after it's in there to drain, we let it sit for 12 hours, and after the 12 hours is done, we'll transfer it to another bucket. And as you can see, this one is almost full because the grains have sprouted or started to sprout. Actually, these are probably a little past that 12 hours. They've been probably going more like a day because you got a little better sprout on them. But they'll expand, and then they kind of fill that bucket up a little more. So from what you start with about a half, you end up with about a full bucket of grain after it expands and everything. It starts to sprout. And basically we just keep transferring. Then we'll just transfer every 12 hours or so from that bucket into another bucket. This bucket has been going a little longer. That one we're feeding out of. But we'll feed about a 1/2 bucket of this a day, and we will feed a 1/2 bucket of the dried grain to the chickens, and a 1/2 bucket of ground corn with ground alfalfa in it, and then also a handful of kelp, Thorvin kelp we use, and a handful of Redmond salt. And we find that gives it a little extra nutrient, a little extra minerals. And all of this you want to do in a warm place. You want it to be 65 to 70 degrees. We're doing it in the basement right now because it's Nebraska and it's winter. You do it in the barn, it'll freeze. You'll have a mess. And down there we got a floor drain, so we just drain it down through a floor drain. We don't bring it in and out of the house. All we have to do is bring in the dry grain and put water in it, and then just transfer it one place to another. It does get a little sloppy going from one bucket to another. You might want to have a broom to sweep things up. But that's going to end in a nutshell. Dry grain, soak it 12 hours, and then every 12 hours just keep transferring it to a new bucket so it gets a little air in it. That'll keep it from getting moldy. You don't want it to get moldy. If it gets to being moldy, you're probably letting it sit too long. You may want to slow down how much you're soaking at a time, or slow down how often you're soaking a batch at a time, and that way you can kind of keep it moving through buckets and keep getting a little air in there, and that'll keep it from getting moldy on you. But that's it in a nutshell. Thanks for watching. Stay free, friends.